Good morning, everyone. A little wake-up call to my past, present, and future self. I've had a lot of opportunity in this life for reflection, but none so much as, reaching what would be where most people have a midlife crisis. And I felt like I had that when I was 30. And I guess that's part of living a life that is purely by instinctual design, otherwise possibly known as the Tao, following your gut, following your gut. And I feel like I would have benefited knowing more about myself through astrology at a younger age and owning sides of myself from an earlier point in time and being able to empower myself from that, as opposed to what has been instinct without intellect behind it. For this purpose of communicating, I feel like it's valuable for our world to understand that there's a much broader perspective that we can have within our lives. Most of us have a day-to-day, moment-to-moment fumbling through life, tripping over obstacles in our way, responding in ways where, in hindsight, perhaps we would have witnessed ourselves choosing differently. And we're all going to be a part of that. That's life. And life can be empowering. I began focusing on astrology instinctually, born 0 degrees Cancer, winter solstice here. It's kind of a pivotal pagan time. I've been growing food by moon calendars and biodynamic alignments of planets for decades and decades, and yet never really understood the power of it within my own choices until I've lived more of a life that doesn't require me to strenuously exist, to work for the man, pay bills, and satisfy the requirements that are quite common in our world today. I recognise that over the last 100 years, society has changed immeasurably and our value has decreased. We have less time, we have less life, we have more things, but we don't have the time to perhaps integrate in them as much. And quality of life, while it seems to have gone up in the value and technology and good old modern medicine, it may not actually be the life that life had designed for us, or that humanity was best to engage in. And I guess being privy to this in advance, my journey has seen me change through life because I have seen the circumstances that might be worthwhile avoiding or integrating, or, for lack of a better word, manipulating to our own benefits. I wasn't raised anywhere, more like raised everywhere. from 3 months old straight to the Vietnam War. In fact, in utero, in the Vietnam War. Saigon, Ho Chi Minh City, whatever. Father, Norwegian CIA sleeper agent. Then travelling until 6, come back to Australia just with mother, becoming bigwig CEO of world's largest pharmaceutical company. So raised with aspects of what is today a modern requirement, but in the building blocks of it. Then some years later, after moving all over Australia, restructuring these businesses, watching sex sell pharmaceuticals, back out to 100 kilometres from where I was born, on rather large land, dealing with modern agrochemical agriculture. Hence the reason why, before I was 16, or about the age of 16, I went and studied permaculture and been growing food for many, many years, and many other things to grow, and to a degree, substances that are only now getting the value in health and medicine that they deserved back then. However, none of these corporations like competition. So, journeying through life, focus on creativity, a lot of things in my 5th house. And the relationship to astrology and my life in hindsight is phenomenal. In which case, it can be seen as like living truly to the Tao. Wanderer, you might say. And these are the historical aspects of medicine men, seers, sages. They are existent, not resistant. So the breadth of exploration in my life has been rather unique, and I give a lot of thanks for that. And it's not all roses, but it is existence. And what do we come to this world for? Did we come here for a new car every year? Or did we come here to sit in the new car in a suit that we don't enjoy wearing, to go to a job that we don't like, to pay for a place that we don't get to spend much time on? So the principle of living life in reverse could actually be hidden in astrology and the understanding. What have you got in your 10th house? What's your career? What's the relationship in your 7th house? How are you going to deal with relationships, marriages, business partners? What about the 4th house and 5th house for family, children? 1st house and 2nd house, how are we going to treat ourselves? What are we going to sustain ourselves on? And getting an understanding as to some of us in flow, some of us the world paves the way to create. I think that maybe used to be the case. I think many today, it's the parents that are actually paving the way for the future generations of children. The bank of mum and dad, these principles that come into it, but all being aside, the depth of experience perhaps has the potential to understand the depth of understanding of future experiences. So history is a loop in many ways. It might not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. And there are opportunities to understand in our behaviour, and therefore in others' behaviour, social behaviours. And then we start to take a look up the runs a bit. We start to see who is pulling the strings, puppet masters. You could say governments, but they don't really do what you think that they do. So there are relationships to how the opportunity becomes forethought in a depth of understanding of one's past. But we have to live a little bit broader than a backyard, mum and dad's bedroom, one job, one town, this kind of thing, to be able to witness what is capable of being seen. Otherwise, we are just like blinkered. And while that's fine for so many, it might come to a point in time when the blinkered actually wish that they had have looked or listened to those that had a bit more vision. And we're in one of those stages of social consequences, economic circumstances, and influences. I've got a thing for influences. Anybody trying to be something isn't what they want to be. Because if you have to try, then it's not real. It's not natural. And so, what do we want out of an influencer? How do we want to be influenced? And I think ultimately what has influenced people over time has been the square. So the boob tube, the box, the television. A thing that I've actually never owned, because who has time for it when you're a creative soul? Now, television in Latin is tell you a vision. So you're being told what your vision is. Now, I've seen television as coming from a time of television where there were times for TV, so your show was on the time. So then you were bound within your life experiences to be back for that show. I guess at some point you could record it and watch it later on, and now we have it on hand whenever we like. So we question the idea of the time relationship in it, but the vision is still the same. The marketing strategies, the influences that have been on television for so long are now being transported into other versions of the tube. And what are they influencing? Are they and what are we thinking about them being an influencer? You see, I'm just not one thing, but throughout my life been rather influential. And I'm not going to waste airwaves. But perhaps if you want to ask in the comment section, maybe I'll do a video in relation to the change, because I am an agent of change. So when we're influencing, I'm not influencing maybe your life, but I influence the world. And having a hiatus from being so influential, because I wanted to recap myself, reinstigate who I am and what my choices are going to be for the next 50 years of being myself. So I wanted to share with you today the idea that we do have empowerment within us. And then there's probably are very many NPCs, non-player characters, wanderers around video games. Of course, I never had a TV, so I never got into video games. A little bit old for that generation to just sit around, smoke billies, and fiddle. Instead, I was off travelling the world on push bikes and climbing mountains that should never have been climbed, and working in places where you can get eaten by grizzly bears, and sitting on zafus, meditation cushions, to explore my inner. But where do we end up in relation to the social changes that have brought us together? So I think the comparison that we have in the external world could be designed for comparison for our internal world. And again, I believe the tools in astrology, in understanding our charts, our placements of planets, and the relationship between it all, that brings greater insight, greater understanding, and more of what our life's purpose is designed to become while we are here on this planet, in these bodies, because we are not just these vessels. So I aim to assist in relation to the reconfiguration of what is a rather broken version of society. And if I can leave you with an interesting phrase from my, or statement from my mother, some 6, 7 or 8 years ago or something. We were discussing the circumstances around I guess it's the 2012 election here in Australia, because I've got a rather political background as well. Our whole family does. But it created some communication, and then we argued for the fact that apparently I couldn't know more than she does because she's older. And I thought, well, that's devolutionary. And the idea that I've raised my children to be smarter than me by the time they were teenagers is how I would like society to integrate, not to mention the aspect of living a life that allows them to live on this planet, and their children and their children. I guess that's been my whole code, which in turn, some years later, she'd said to me, being the alternate one, the eldest of the generation, who changed the generation, following generations completely. The organic farmer, the biodynamic farmer, the permaculturalist, the fossil fuel protester, the creative that writes songs that change the future of fossil fuel protesting. Yeah, just all in years gone by. She had a lot of concern for me for my whole life because I was different. Why can't I just be normal like everybody else? And I would say, why be normal when you can be yourself? Well, she came across the realization perhaps, that everything that I'd focused on in my life was what society would benefit focusing on in theirs. But it took about 30 years of me practicing it without the support or concern of my family. And from that moment, it became a little bit of an awakening. And if that is one thing that we can do in our lives, is help people around us explore new paths, gentler paths for the future, as opposed to being harsh on our future because of the past. So, 20 minutes is up. Speed this sucker up for sure. Speed all of my suckers up. And by all means, leave comments, and if you're interested, share. But the more people I've got following this channel, the more of a problem society's going to have, being controlled in the process of existing under the restrictions that are bound by our demographics, our nations, our financial situations, our health concerns, and all of that. So it's about 5:30 in the morning here, and I just wanted to share with you all sober-eyed and ready to go out and spend some time in the garden in the morning, and then rest and be creative throughout the day. So living a life that we can exist in becomes a life that we really do live. Much love.